We're so close to hitting 100 subscribers.
That's quite big. Nice.
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck happened, but apparently we've now doubled in subscribers since last week, so, yeah, that's cool. Alright, here we go, satellite radio. We are in week number 8. Last week, we opened most of the remaining cards that we needed from Battles of Legend, to be honest. There's only 2 real cards from there now that we want, which is another Invocation and the Dark Invoked. Kaliaga, that's it. So, we're going to take a pause from it for this week, and we're going to go back into Duel Overload, simply for the reason of we really want Predaplan Anaconda. We really want it. It is such a good card, and it allows us to go hunt for an actual boss monster, and that boss monster would be the Legendary Dragoon, which means we're going to be opening a lot of tins if we actually get the Anaconda at some point. But in order to do so, we have to get the Anaconda first, don't we? On the other hand, let's go into Duel Overload. We got a Dark Magician Girl. I like this artwork as well in black and white. It's really nice looking. Let's put that over to the side, because that is not the bulk of the product. Bulk of the product is right here. Let it rain from the heavens. Alright, 6 more packs of Duel Overload, each one of these having the chance to contain our Predaplant. We want you, Mr. Predaplant. Witchcrafter Creation is not a Predaplant. Malefic Selector is not a Predaplant. Card of Fate's not a Predaplant. Another Sci-Fi Mode Omega is not a Predaplant, and neither is Cubic Casualty. My cat is also playing with a straw in the background, so enjoy the sound of that. You're a dumbass, kitty. I hope you know that. Okay, hello. She exists. Right. Chaos Dragon Levineer. Deck Lockdown. Hysteric Sign. Scrap Orthros. Double Evolution Pill. Not what we want either. We're not playing dinosaurs here, are we? We don't want to do with dinos. It would be nice to open a Haligraphax now that we have a Union Carrier as well. Not that we need it, but just for, you know, completionist's sake, I suppose. Right, ooh, Relinquished Anima. This is also a really interesting card. It's unfortunate we don't have a level 1 monster in the deck, but this used to be really good. King Yosukui, Watt Giraffe, Dangerous Fight for Nightmare, and Whitemare. Also not cards that we need. Come on, Duel Overload. You've not let... No, you let me down every time I open you, actually. I'm not gonna lie. You're kind of a disappointment to me. I'm gonna put down my glasses. Oh my god! Fuck yeah, dude! You're joking! I just said you're a complete disappointment to me, and you give me the Predaplant. Predaplant Verte Anaconda. You can target one face-up monster on the field that becomes dark until the end of this turn. You can pay 2,000 life points to send one fusion or polymerization normal or quick play spell from your deck to the graveyard. This effect becomes that spell's effect for the turn. We have our way in to Dragoon. Oh god, you, my little darling, are going right there. Magical Musketeer Caspar, King Dragoon, Speedroid Marble Machine, Dreadnought Dreadnoid. I can't fucking believe this. I complain once on how you've disappointed me at every turn, and you give me, I think, the most expensive card in the set. Oh my lord. Okay then, yeah, sure. You did it. Oh, the alternate art tour guide! That's really nice. I wanted one of these. Not that I need it, but I wanted it. Suravis, the ancient and the whatever. Synchro Transcend. Last Warrior from Another Planet and Cubic Ascension. It doesn't matter. There's a Predaplan on my table. Oh my god. There's no fucking way Snaky Boy's here. Five-headed Link Dragon. Another Samorg. This girl. Phantasm. Herald of Mirage Lights. All of these cards here. Every single one of these. Okay, no, you know what? I care about you. The rest of you, go screw off. Because we got the fucking Predaplant. Oh no. We got it. I'm in fucking shock over here. So that means now we have two things we need to do. We need to attempt one more time to get a second invocation off of Battles of Legend Armageddon. And then we probably need to try and find like a Boral Sword or something now that we have Cross Sheep as well. And then we need to go into 2020 Oh god, it's about to get real. We're getting there, guys. Woo! Okay, I'm going ahead and adding this to the deck, and I'll see you in our duels.
But before we get into our duels for this week, I'd like to make an announcement. We now have an official Discord server that you can join in order to talk about card games, memes, and, you know, just call me bad at Yu-Gi-Oh! Because let's be honest, I'm pretty shit at this game. Other than that, I'd like to thank everyone that subscribed in the last week or so, because that number has gotten ridiculously high, but we are not stopping there. We are still getting to 1,000 as our goal for 2021, and every single one of you can help us get there. Click that subscribe button, click the like button, click that little bell if you like hearing my dumbass voice play card games. But most of all, if you have a suggestion for the series, drop a comment down below. I do spend a fair amount of time reading all of them, so even if you don't see a notification that I've answered, I've probably read it. Now, it's duel time! So for our first duel this week, we're playing up against True Draco, another archetype that I've essentially never seen before. Our opponent starts off by playing Pot of Duality, going straight into his Dynamite Knight is the name of that card, but we will attempt to set ourselves a Falco and then debate whether or not it's worth popping Invocation to do a fusion. He activates the effect to immediately activate True King's Return, which is essentially worst case scenario for us because we cannot actually fight anything. We go into Apkalon and attempt to shut down True Draco's Return for the turn at the very least. Unless he has a way of getting rid of it. Winda sets us a Beast, and then he flips open True Draco Apocalypse, which essentially halves our monster's attack, meaning we have absolutely no way of beating over his True Draco. We pass the turn to our opponent, thinking that, yeah, he's probably just going to punch us for a bunch of damage, and shocking surprise, he does. We take the damage thinking, okay, what can we do to get out of this? We go into Shaddoll Incarnation to get our Hedgehog back onto the board to see if we can fuse it to something that can help us, which he destroys a True King's Return to set another True King's Return, and now we're really in the shit. We pop an Allure of Darkness. Our opponent decides to add another True King, whatever, Calamity I think it is. I never remember the name of these cards, but yeah, we decide to play a Hedgehog, flip him up to get a Shaddoll Fusion. For a moment here, I debate whether or not it's worth trying to go into Anaconda to use a Super Poly, but then I remember that we removed Anion Talus, so it's kind of impossible. We instead decide to set Dragon and use the effect of Incarnation to flip Dragon face up in order to attempt to return one of his cards to the hand. And here is misplay number 1 of today. I could have done that a lot better. We then decide to Elsadov use into Winda, to which he gets Metaltron, the True Draco Combatant, and this card proved to be the bane of my existence because I can't punch over it. It's a 3k beater that's protected by the True King trap cards, essentially cutting all my monsters' attack in half. Like, what can I do to beat him? I can't punch over him! And this was infuriating to me because it doesn't actually have an effect by itself, it's just a beat stick. So, we attempt to go through this by getting Falco, to which he flips there can only be 1. And now we're kind of screwed, because I had to drop my entire line of play, because my idea here was to link into Shaddoll Construct in order to make El Shaddoll Construct, but that turns out that I can't do now because I'm limited to only one spellcaster at a time. Essentially, there can only be one is a card we haven't run into before, and I just now realized how bad that card is for us. Because even though our fusions all have different types like spellcasters, fairies, plant, whatever, all of our base cards are spellcasters. If we get hit by a there can only be one, we are screwed. At this time, I just go, okay, there's nothing I can do here. So I'm going to attempt to force him to have the trap card by using Alistair's effect to boost. But he does have Apocalypse. We do get cut in half. We get cut in half twice even because he has 2 Apocalypses. And at this point, there is really not much we can do. Any attack that we shove into him is just going to get halved. We don't have anything stronger than 3k, and due to there can only be one, we have no way of getting into a construct because he doesn't have any extra deck monsters. He's playing 2 Draco. We don't have anything to... Like, Shaddoll Fusion never goes live for us, so we are just screwed here. Our opponent goes off and grants himself more of the 2 Draco Monarch cards for free, essentially, because what can we do to stop him? I have a look at my extra deck going, is there anything I can do here? And yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try and bounce something. I can't target the Megalith currently thanks to the spell card. So instead, I'm just gonna see what I can do. I'm just gonna normal summon Squamata. I'm gonna try and go into Verde Anaconda. And then I realize that there isn't really anything here that I can do except Instant Fusion, and I just scoop him up because there's nothing I can do. Game number 2, and as you can see, our starting hand is goddamn awful. Not once have I wanted to have 4 fusion cards in my hand that are... None of them are live. We just decided to set Wendy. We set 2 face down, one of them being El Shaddoll Fusion and one of them being Super Poly, hoping that he will play something early that we can Super Poly into, forcing him to deal with it. That is essentially our only goal here. He starts off with a Pot of Duality yet again, managing to get into his Dynamite Knight once more, and it's a water type, so we can't Super Poly with it. He activates Draconic Diagram, which just gives 2 Draco cards extra attack, essentially. He can also pop one of them at any point to pull himself another one from the deck to his hand. Imagine how bad that is when he can just pull 2 Draco Apocalypse out of nowhere. He sets 2, activates Disciples of the 2 Draco Phoenix, which essentially just, again, lets him play his Draco cards for free, dumping one of the cards in order to pop our Wendy and special summon his Dynamite Knight. Wendy's effect does go off, to which he chains and sets another one. We decide that we need card draw here, so we just go into Beast. Our opponent decides to activate a Tribute Summon for Ignis Heat, which is a fire that we also cannot use with Super Poly. Beast does get flipped up, and we are allowed to take the effect, drawing into a Twin Twister and a Squamata, which are both horrible here, because again, we have nothing that can beat over him. We take 2,800 damage, and he passes the turn, to which we draw Magical Meltdown, which may be our only chance to actually get something done if we can get into something like a Purgatrio. So we decide to activate it. Our opponent then activates the effect of Ignis Heat, which just lets him activate yet another 2 Draco card, you know, because we haven't dealt with enough of those, apparently. He activates Heritage. We do get to drive ourselves an Alistair, and here I'm stuck thinking, what can I do to get over him? Because I need to pop the card in the back, because without it there's no chance I'm getting over. But that uses my normal summon. And I don't have enough cards in my hand to make my combo work, because what I need to do is I need to get rid of Apocalypse. Apocalypse being the thing that cuts my monster's attack in half. And I also need to make sure that I have Squamata fetching me another card, which is nearly impossible. I go for the invocation to go into Mechaba, to which he activates Lose 1 Turn, which essentially negates Mechaba, which is awful, because now I can't use it. At this point, there isn't really anything I can do except attempt to go into Construct, but Construct will also be negated. So I'm just sitting here, okay, do I wait and attempt to go into Construct even though it gets negated thanks to Lose 1 Turn? Or do I just fire off Twin Twisters, getting rid of Lose 1 Turn and the True Draco, and then just hope I pull into something? I decide instead to set both cards, attempting to trick our opponent to thinking we have something stronger than what we do. Mechaba does go offline, but there's not much we could have done with Mechaba. We could have banished one of them, essentially, but wouldn't really have helped, because he would have just, you know, if we had a card in hand, he would have just gone into battle phase and beat over it first. He goes into Majesty Maiden, which is also awful because it pops a card, which you're going to see in just a moment ends horribly for us. He does attempt to pop our Shaddoll Fusion, forcing us to activate it early, unfortunately. To which he activates another True King Trap card. We go into Construct, even though Construct is negated, its attack points are still equal to our opponent, which is as good as we're gonna get currently. It's the only real defense that we had, but lose one turn is going to force it into defense position whether we like it or not. It's also gonna stay negated. Shaddoll Dragon does go off, and we decide, okay, our only way out here is to pop lose one turn so Construct effect goes live again, because if anything attacks into it, it'll be immediately destroyed even if it's in defense position. Our opponent then decides to shuffle 3 cards back into the deck and draw, and here comes our demise. He removes his spell card to go into Majesty Maiden, popping our Twin Twister in the back, using Apocalypse to pop one of his trap cards to pop Construct, and that's gonna be game. There were a few times in this game where I probably could have done better, and I needed to turbo Construct harder, but it is what it is. Duel number 2, we're going up against Dogmatika Invoked, and we've skipped a few seconds ahead here because our opponent was taking an incredibly long time to take his turn. He did nothing but play Magical Meltdown, play Aliester, play Almirage, Secure Gardna, Invocation into Mechaba, and then special summoning the Dogmatika card. He then forces us to dump 2 cards from our extra deck to the graveyard, to which we dump Construct and Apkalone. He also dumps Apkalone and the True Fire, whatever it's called. We decide that it's probably better here to drop the dragon in order to pop his Magical Meltdown to have a chance to negate or prevent his fusions. He then sets 1, activates the effect of the card I can never remember the name of, the special summon Dogmatika Ecclesia. Ecclesia's effect then activates, of course, granting him another Dogmatika card, and it is our move. We draw into an Effect Veiler, which is decent if we had it the turn earlier. We decide to set ourselves a Hedgehog, activate Super Poly, going into Construct, removing his Mechaba. He then activates Shaddoll Schism, which I kind of feared that he had, then special summoning Dogmatika Fleur-de-Lis. Fleur-de-Lis is incredibly annoying for us because it shuts down Construct's effects, and he decides to go into Winda, preventing us from special summoning anything else for the turn. We don't really have any other special summons to do for the turn, so, you know, we're just kind of stuck with it anyway. I give it a long, hard thought to think, okay, what can we do to get out of this? So I just decide to punch into his Fleur-de-Lis and end the turn there, knowing he has Schism. There's not much more we can do because I know that Schism is going to kill us on the following turn. We punch into it for 300 damage and just end our turn on that with nothing else to do. Our opponent then plays another Aliester, to which we decide to use our Effect Veiler to make sure he doesn't get another Invocation off, because that'd be real bad. He then activates Schism, makes his own Construct, popping our Construct, and essentially allowing him to go in for game. At this point, he decides to go into Anaconda. I know that Dragoon is coming, so I'm just like, okay, I'm scooping. I'm surrendering. And then he decided to close the window. So that's a tie for us. With a loss and a tie in our bag, we go into game number 3, where we're playing up against pure artifacts. I didn't even know this was a thing you could play. Our opponent sets 3 and passes, making me think that this is Eldritch. So I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna fire off a Shaddoll Fusion to see what he activates, to see if I can shut it down. Our opponent then flips Heavy Storm Duster, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then he pops both of his back row, and I see artifacts, and I'm like, oh! I decide to go into a Construct just to beat over anything that's going to come back, because obviously something's coming back. Scythe is going to activate, preventing us from fusion summoning or doing anything with our extra deck. Aegis is going to protect them from card effect destruction for the turn, but we just decide to pop off anyway. We get our Trick Clown back onto the field. He gets his Scythe, he gets his Aegis, to which we chain Winda's effect just to get something else on the board, and we decide to go for the usual beast. At this point, I'm like, okay, so that doesn't really matter to us, because Construct is strong enough to just beat over anything that he puts our way here. I decide, okay, I can't fuse or do anything else this turn, so I pass it to my opponent. My opponent then decides to do the same thing again and just set 2 cards, switch his Scythe into attack mode, and punch into my Clown. I'm not really quite sure why he decided to punch into my Clown, considering it just comes back, but that's what my opponent decides to do in the end. He also takes a very long time taking his turn, as you can see, because most likely he doesn't read cards. I take 1,000 damage, Trick Clown comes back. And with that, my opponent passes turn. We draw into an Shaddoll fusion, which is interesting, but we flip open Beast and attempt to draw 2 more cards to really seal the deal to make sure that he can't do any more shenanigans here. Ironically, this would have been a very good game to have Lancia in, but I don't have that in my sideboard currently, which is ironic. We draw into a Ghost Ogre and an Allure of Darkness, and I decide to dump the Allure because at this point I don't really need it. We go to Magical Meltdown, to which our opponents chains Artifact Ignition, essentially popping it, which is unfortunate. But we have the Aliester in hand anyway, so we don't really care. We pop off an Invocation. Our opponent uses Heavy Storm Duster again, just to pop his own card along with Invocation. Invocation still goes off, obviously. We decide to use his Scythe and our Aliester to go into Mechaba. We then activate Invocation's effect in the graveyard to pull it back to our hand. We go into battle phase and we begin smacking him in the face. Our opponent goes down to 2,700 life points when we end our turn, and our opponent quickly begins to realize that there is not much he can do. He sets one and then concedes. For the next duel, he goes first, again, attempting to do the same thing. Sets 4 back row, passing to us. We draw into a Super Poly, which doesn't help us. We will attempt to go into Foolish Burial to try and get a combo started, and seeing if he's going to prevent us from using the extra deck again. But he doesn't. We dump a Squamata, dump a Wendy. You know this ordeal already. We've done it so many times at this point that I forget how to count. We set Beast, decide to set a Wendy, we set a Super Poly, and we just pass to our opponent. I kind of want him to summon something so I can gain advantage of it, but he just sets one and now has a full back row and does nothing. We flip open Beast, attempting to draw 2 more cards, because at this point, why wouldn't we? There's nothing threatening us. He activates Artifact Ignition, and I'm like, oh boy. So obviously he's going to pop something here, and it's just going to be bad. And he pops Vyra, and Vyra is very important because it allows him to pop every single one of his back rows when it is summoned. That's kind of bad. We do get Beast's effect, and I'm like, ew. I do decide not to use Aerial here because it wouldn't be well enough chained. So I actually let him pop off. He pops all of his back row, and when the effects are chained, I go, hey, I have Super Poly. So I actually use Super Poly on both of my own cards in order to go into Winda to only allow him to special summon Aegis, and after that, nothing more, buddy. You're not getting me this time. I do have an Invocation in my hand that I debate using. I go like, yeah, you know what, I'm going to do that just to go into Construct. Construct is special summon, we activate the effect in order to dump Incarnation to the grave. We use Construct to destroy his artifact and whatever the barrier, Aegis, however you pronounce it. Winda beats over the non-cool one, and then of course we get Time Lorded again. I hate these cards so goddamn much. Yeah, this is the Time Lord that halves the opponent's life points, and I'm like, well shit, I'm activating Turtle, I'm not dealing with you. Turtle goes off, he passes his turn. We draw into a Mathematician here, and I go, okay, is there anything I can really do here? I activate Mathematician. I decide to dump a Wendy, setting a Dragon. I then activate a Shaddoll Incarnation's effect to flip Dragon face up, returning it to the hand, forcing him to get it again, and punching him in the face for almost lethal. Almost. We're very close, and I'm sitting here like, okay, he's going to Time Lord again, he's going to attack, I'm going to lose half my life points, then the following turn I should be fine. We take half our life points in damage, and we draw into an Aliester, and I'm like, ooh, can we do something with that? Because at this point, I don't have Grista in my deck, so I can't use Super Poly to get rid of it. I do debate it for a moment going into Predaplant anyway, but then I realize I have Winda in place, I wouldn't be able to do anything anyway. I do summon Aliester, forgetting that my Invocation's currently in the graveyard, so it doesn't do me anything, because I'm a dum-dum. Not like that's anything new, right? I simply switch Mathematician to defense mode, and I end my turn. During the standby phase, it is returned to the deck, because it is a Time Lord, so it only sticks around for a turn. He sets one and passes. At this point, I go, okay, I'm activating Twin Twisters, I'm getting rid of both of your back row here. If it's an artifact, so be it, and it turns out to be Artifact Ignition. Ignition is going to destroy my Twin Twister, shocking surprise, and Achilles Shield gets popped and gets summoned. This turn, artifacts cannot be destroyed by battle, which is worse than the effect one, so we simply decide to just activate and go into Predaplant anyway to have it ready for the next turn, should he do some bananas things. He could punch into it and kill it, of course, but if he does, he puts himself in the spot where I might be able to punch over him. He simply sets one and passes. So I go, okay, I'm just going to go straight into battle here. I'm not going to fuff around with it. He has Artifact Ignition again, and he pops Mortatak, or Mortak, the sword, whatever it's named. When a special summon, you can destroy one face-up card I control. And here, he doesn't read his cardboard, because he targets Winda. Winda does not get destroyed. We simply kill his artifacts again and go in for 500, and if I had been smart enough to swap my dragon to attack mode, I would have ended the game right then and there. He then top decks Time Maiden, which allows him to draw into another Time Lord. He goes into Metayan. It's the one that returns all the cards to the hand, which just infuriates me. I decide to set Dragon immediately, because I know this card is going to get returned. It does. And at this point, if he attacks into the Dragon, it's just going to flip up whatever it is, especially if it's a Time Lord. If a Time Lord gets flipped, it has 0 attack, so if it attacks, I still survive on 0 defense. So, the following turn, my plan is just to get Dragon flipped, return whatever it is to the hand, and attack for game. He does go into another Time Lord, which is Metayan, again, but because it has 0 defense, and 0 attack, rather, it just gets returned to the hand. Its effect to bounce does not go off because it is no longer on the field. He activates Instant Fusion, killing himself, giving us the win. For our 4th duel today, we're going up against Salamangreats, which is, as you know, a personal favorite of mine. Our opponent starts off by playing Foxy, which allows him to excavate the top 3 cards of his deck in order to try and find a Salamangreat card, which he doesn't. So he decides to go into Balinx in order to get a Sanctuary to his hand. He then ends his turn without activating Sanctuary, probably to try and protect it in case I have something to destroy it. Thanks to Balinx, we can go into our Shaddoll fusion and start off real strong. Our opponent gives it some thought, I'm thinking in my head he probably has an Ash to get rid of this, because that would make the most amount of sense. And, of course, he does. So we go, okay, we're actually going to Called by the Grave this Ash, so our Shaddoll fusion goes through. We think for a moment what could his back row be, but we decide just to go ham for it anyway. We drop a Beast and the Shingenmabobber Dragon to go into Winda, because we're only going to be making 2 special summons here anyway, so I'm like, okay, let's go for it. We drop the Dragon to attempt to pop his back row, which turns out to be impermanent, so it was definitely the correct option to do, and Beast draws us a card and draws us into Alistair. Aha! We decide to go off of it, drawing ourselves an invocation to go into Purgatorio thanks to the Foxy that's in his graveyard. We pop it out, we activate Invocation's effect to draw Alistair to our hand in order to beat him down for as much damage as humanely possible. But then I go, you know what, we're just going to hold on to this, I think, and just punch him in the face and see what happens. But he surrenders, taking us immediately into game number 2, where our starting hand is slightly worse. We have an Instant Fusion, we have 2 Beasts, and a Wendy. Not exactly great when our opponent immediately begins by playing Foolish Burial, dropping a Spinny into the graveyard. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, this is going to be a really difficult game because we have no play whatsoever on our turn. He does have the Jaguar in his hand, he goes into Balinx. Balinx will, of course, fetch him a Sanctuary, but he also activates Parallel Exceed from his hand, giving him 2 Exceeds. Oh boy, he is gonna pop off this game, and I'm worried now because I don't know what I could possibly do to get out of this unless he messes up royally. He decides to drop it into an Update Jammer, which essentially just negates everything that does anything. He uses his Balinx to go into another Balinx the way that Salamangreats do. Then he takes 15 years. This player was probably one of the slowest players I've played against for a long time. He drops both of them to go into a Splash Mage, and I'm sitting there going, okay, so he's definitely dropping his Balinx to the graveyard to protect his Salamangreat cards. I get that, but where is this going to lead? He goes into Parallel Exceed once again, pulling it back, which means he now has access to a rank 3, which he goes into Transcode Talker. Transcode Talker puts the code inverter back onto the board. He sets 1, and I go, oh no, it's going to be access code, isn't it? And yeah, it's access code, and I'm going, well, shit, what can I don't have an out to access code turn 1 when he has protection, until I draw into the sideboard at Pankratops. I attempt to pop his Sanctuary in his back row by dropping Beast. He protects the Sanctuary. I go, alright, You done goofed now, buddy. I decide to special summon Pankratops, activating its effect to get rid of Access Code Talker, and at this point, it is smooth sailing with, the 0 cards that we have. We play Wendy face down, and we set Instant Fusion, attempting to trick our opponent, and I don't know if he has another strong play here. He plays Falco to special summon back Spinny from the graveyard, and I'm going, okay, where's this gonna go? It's probably gonna go into Sunlight Wolf, he's gonna recur Sunlight Wolf, but does he have a beater to get me over with now that his access code is gone? Because he popped it a little bit early, I feel like. Our opponent does go into Sunlight Wolf, as expected. He does get to set a Roar from his graveyard, which is mighty unfortunate for me. He does shuffle up Baelings back into the deck in order to get Jack Jaguar back. He then activates Fusion of Fire, and I'm like, oh, here comes a big boy. And it does. Violet Chimera hits the board, which gains attack equal to half of the combined attack of the monsters used to summon it. However, he bashes straight into our Wendy when I decide to set a Hedgehog face down. At this point, we are just going to pop off. Drawing into a Magical Meltdown, we draw an Aliester back to our hand. We do a quick check and we go, okay, just how hard can we punch this man? We activate Instant Fusion in order to get Raijin onto the board so we can flip his card face down. We flip open Hedgehog in order to draw into a Shaddoll Fusion, activating our Shaddoll Fusion to go into Construct, meaning we have a way of just absolutely massacring this boy. We drop a Dragon in order to deal with his face down card, and we drop a Trick Clown, making us able to go into any Link 2. But then he concedes, and we take the win against Salamangreat once again. God, that's a good feeling. For our final duel of today, we're going up against Nekroz, which is another one of the things I've been wanting to play for a long time, but just have never seen. So he activates his Preparation of Rites after our first turn of setting 1 passing, thanks to our god-awful hand once again. We decide not to Ash this card, as we don't know what he's playing currently, and I was thinking he was playing Blue Eyes Chaos Max. He wasn't. So I activate Ash Blossom. He goes into a Gamma to negate it, and I'm just like, oh shit. So here I am thinking he's going to synchro into Framelord Omega, but he doesn't. He instead activates all of his Nekroz plays, and I just go, uh-oh. So Nekroz of the Unicorn is the one that comes in first. He punches in for a massive amount of damage thanks to his Gamma play that he did, and then passes to us. Shaddoll Fusion is not live here because rituals don't count towards the extra deck. Oh no, we have a Super Poly, but all of his monsters are currently not the typings we want to use it with, so we just set a Dragon, set Super Poly, and pass, hoping that he will go into any other element of card. He, unfortunately, doesn't, and just gets another Candle and a Pensiplume of Incantation, and at this point, I go, okay, I have to pop off soon, otherwise I'm just going to be screwed. He activates his Kaleidoscope, which is essentially going to get him another Nekroz card onto the board, and I'm like, okay, at this point I have to do something. I decide to go into Construct just to be able to beat over anything, but then I realize quickly that, oh yeah, anything summoned from the extra decks is negated. He activates Nekroz of Colossus to set me to 0 attack, and I just get punched in the face for game. Game number 2, our start is equally as horrible, with our only start being Mathematician, but he goes to Gamma it, and I'm like, fuck, do I drop this now? And I decide to do so just so I can see if I can get a play started, but then I forget that Gamma is now once per turn, and he can just do it again. I drop Wendy onto the board, and I go, shit, that's right, Gamma can be activated at any time, and I go, well, shit. We have a strike set, we have an Instant Fusion in hand, so I'm like, okay, is there anything I can do here? I activate Instant Fusion, I go into Winda just to have something on the board. I decide to go into Predaplant, and then I'm like, wait, I goofed. I can't Super Poly, I don't have a Shaddoll on the board. So I go, okay, well, let's just make a Winda instead, and then pass the board. And I quickly realized that Winda is the strongest card I could have brought into this, because he can't use his whatever the hell they're called, incantation cards, because they are forced summons. And then he just closes the window and concedes, giving us a bye for the last game. With that in mind, we have come out of another week with star chips to spare, earning us a grand total of 7 of them. Even if 2 games were buys this week and we lost the first game in them, we actually managed to take 2 victories, and that means a lot, because that means that next week we can actually enable challenges. as long as the magical merchant still owns his store, because let's be honest, we haven't seen him since episode 2. But hey, that's something to look forward to for you guys. But as always, thank you for watching this far. If you enjoy my content, click the subscribe button. I'm going to keep reminding you people until we hit 1,000, and after that, I'm going to die a happy man. As always, stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.